Well, hello there and welcome to today's video. We are going to tackle digital clutter today. I'm on my computer, I'm going to share my system with you. So let's dive into how we can deal with all the files, photos and other things you probably have floating around somewhere. So why do we need to look at digital clutter when we look at our overall world? Well, it goes without saying, most of us have memory cards from new or old cameras, we have USB sticks, we have hard drives, small or large, we have our laptops, and we have a heck of a lot of stuff in our phones as well. So when it comes to digital clutter, it can be equally stressful to physical clutter because much like your mail arrives all the time, your kids bring stuff home from school, you go shopping, etc. So physical stuff comes into your world, but in this digital world, especially with phones, emails and things like that, you get probably more stuff in your digital clutter than in your physical stuff. So today I'm going to cover 5 really simple steps to get on top of your digital clutter and how I would organize things if I was starting from scratch today. So let's dive in to my favorite tips. So the very first thing we're going to do is to pick your online backup system. There's loads to choose from and it can be a little bit overwhelming, but basically if you are an all Apple user, which I am not, you can go for something like iCloud. By the way, every single solution for the average person, you will need to pay for some kind of service simply because you probably have more photos and documents than the free subscription allows. But you can choose between iCloud, there is the Google universe and Google Drive and Photos. You could do Microsoft OneDrive, etc., which is what I personally use, or you could use something like Dropbox. There are pros and cons with all of them, and I'm not affiliated with or have a strong dislike for any of them. I have just picked Microsoft OneDrive for all my documents and photos for the simple reason that I use Microsoft for my work, both with my videos and other things. So I have a Microsoft subscription anyway, so I chose to make that my default folder. But you have a look around and compare the prices, how much documentation and photos you think you have that you want to keep on file. And it can also be really good to get like a family type subscription that you can share with other users in your household if that helps you. The gist of it is consolidating into one platform will greatly help you find stuff. And of course, if you're collaborating with other people, you may at times use other ones, but having your default set will really help you stay on top of your digital stuff. So now that you've picked your online universe where we're going to set everything up, and I'm going to show it all to you shortly, you need a backup system which is off the cloud, so somewhere else. So I just use this kind of large hard drive. This is the kind that you plug into a wall. It's really large. My husband and I had this anyway. This is just my stuff though. But I back all my videos, photos, documents, things I want to keep onto this. And we'll talk a little bit more about backup cadence later, but I used to have a lot of like smaller hard drives all over the place with old photos and stuff like that. So having one physical and one in cloud digital version is really helpful to make sure that if something bad was to happen, you actually do have proper backups of your documents, photos, family memories, and important paperwork. Alright, so for step number 3, we're going to start setting up the folders you're going to need to consolidate your things into. And this is how I would recommend setting anything up from scratch if you haven't got anything in place already, or whatever you have isn't really working for you. So this is my desktop here, and you can see that it's really clean. We're going to be using this sample folder today to show you the folders I'd recommend you set up. So that's not normally here. The only folder I have is this one called WIP. And that's normally work in progress stuff to do with my channel and the videos that I do for you guys across my 2 YouTube channels. So that's the only thing that normally lives on my desktop because it's stuff in transition before they get filed to the appropriate place. Down here at the bottom, I've got the basic things that I use every single week, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and Word. You can obviously pin whatever you want, and obviously if you're on a PC, your screen will look a little bit different to my MacBook. But that's essentially all that I ever have done here, and this here is just the screen recording software that I'm using at the moment to talk to you guys. Under this button here is where my personal folders live. So this is my whole filing system that is a shortcut in the menu, so I can click on this and open up my folders. But I typically just have a simple photo. This is from our wedding. We did a small minimalist elopement style wedding in New Zealand, which I've done a video on, which I will link below if you're interested. But this is essentially all that I keep on my home screen. I keep it really, really simple to make it as easy as possible. And next up, we are going to look at how you can set up your folder structure. Naturally, you kind of need to clear out the space so you can start doing this when you reconcile all your documents from wherever you've got them saved. So we're going to start here by looking at the sample folder I set up for us today. Now, again, this will look different on a Mac and a PC. So you can have your shortcuts here on the left-hand side. I rarely use these. I normally just use the footer of the page. But here we are in the sample folder, and this is how I would recommend that you set the folder up if you're starting from scratch. I normally number folders both when it comes to work and personal, just because that way you get them not necessarily in the alphabetical order, but in the order that you use them the most. So for this example, I've put photos in the first one. These are the folders, by the way, that I use myself. So we've got photos, finance, vehicles, house, insurance, volunteering, etc. You can number all the folders in the order you would normally use them. It's totally up to you. But these are the folders that I typically have on hand myself, and the ones in this instance that are not numbered are the ones that I would probably use less often, aside from kids, because I actually don't have children myself. But I wanted to show you how I would set this up for someone if someone asked for my help as well. So let's start in one of the most frequent ones for most of us, which is photos. So you can set up a backup from your phone or wherever you take your photos from, by the way, so that's quite easy. But I normally organize my photos by year, so 2021, 2022, etc. Inside each year, you've kind of got two options. So I normally don't do them by month, but if you have, say, young kids or you take a lot of photos because that's your personality and lifestyle, you can go January, February, whatever, and then if you know roughly when an event happened, you have the smaller categories. I tend to just list most of the photos from the year inside the folder itself, with the exception of, say, holidays, anniversaries, weddings, bigger parties or events that you have special photos for. So those I would normally, so recently we went to Italy for a holiday, so we had a shared folder with all of our photos from Italy, my husband and I, and they would live inside that folder. So it makes it a lot easier to find the photos when you want to look for them or show someone a slideshow. Next up is finance, which is usually one of the reasons that many of us kind of procrastinate, I guess, and don't want to really do these things because it can be a little bit boring with these sort of things. But finance, we need to keep those documents, and some of them we need to keep paper copies of as well. I've done a separate video on paper decluttering, which I will link below this video for you. But in finance, you can obviously choose the type of folders that you need. I typically use things like bank statements, and here you can obviously go in and further break that down by year. So you can have year 1, year 2, etc. And you can even have it as far as breaking it down by account. So you could, in year 1, you could have account 1, account 2, savings, business account, whatever you do. So bank statements is obviously something that we can also get from our bank, usually online. So you may or may not need this, but bank statements is one common one in the finance folder. Next up, we got pension, or it's called superannuation here in Australia. So having a separate folder for that, and again, breaking that down by year or type of document can be really useful. Tax returns are a big part of being an adult, running a business, working for somebody else. And in my tax return folder, I normally just categorize them by year and then further subcategorize each folder depending on what I need. So for example, you may have a folder inside this year, which is your final tax return. You may have something like, any correspondence with your accountant, etc. So having subfolders though, and having them by year makes it so much easier to find things as you go. Next up, most of us have at least one or a few vehicles. So in here you can have things like your caravan, camper trailer, anything like that, car, etc. And what I recommend doing for each of your vehicles, regardless how many you have, is keeping things like insurance documents. Again, you could further subcategorize this insurance folder by year if you wanted to. But things like insurance, purchase documentation, registration, service documents, if you have had an accident or had to do a repair, you can obviously keep hold of that as well. But again, keeping your vehicles together can just make that a lot easier. Next up is your house or your home. It doesn't really matter if you're renting or if you own, because you will want to keep some paperwork on file, and most of it will likely be digital. So here you can have things like your mortgage, any documents if you've refinanced, etc., purchase contract, any receipts and warranties. Quite often, I live in a brand new house, but quite often these sort of receipts and things like that we do need to keep on hand. Next up, we have things like insurance. So we're talking about insurance, not your home, not your vehicle, but other kind of stuff. So in here you can put things like income insurance, life insurance, anything like that that you have and that you need to keep. A lot of people ask me about this one when I work. I do actually do declutter coaching one-on-one. So if that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments below and I can let you know how that sort of works in me supporting people. But for volunteering, a lot of people do volunteering and are engaged in different places, and usually other organizations will have their own folder system. But if you wanted to keep, I volunteer for a few different organizations supporting women in the workplace, etc. So I would probably just recommend that you keep all your volunteering related documents that you want to keep hold of in a folder by organization. And then let's say that you are responsible for the website for that volunteering organization. You may want to just put some website documents in there. You may want to put some photos from events and things like that. So it's totally up to you how you organize it, but just having a bucket to put it into is really, really helpful. Next up, we have kids. So if you have kids or grandkids or whatever, you can have a folder by child. And you can obviously drop this down further and have things like, you can use this as a digital memory box. So you can have scanned drawings that they've made, or artwork. You can have school-related papers. And then you can further break that down by the age that your child is, and having, what year or what grade they're in. So this is really, really efficient and effective to categorize things like artwork and certain ages that your kids are, or certain things that you want to keep hold of. If it's a certain paperwork, it could be medical and other things like that. That's actually one folder you may want to add, just thinking out loud here, is if you have, obviously you might have things under insurance, but if you have certain medical conditions or someone in your family does, you may want to have a separate folder for anything to do with medical that you keep on hand online. So most of these folders are really self-explanatory, but I'll go through them anyway. So personal can be kind of your own memory box. So we talked about kids just a moment ago, but things like having certain years or categories. You may want to keep your documentation from when you went to school or when you went to university. For me personally, I have pre-high school because I don't have a lot of things from that period that I have digitized. And then I have my high school stuff, so essays and things like that, and then I have one for university. So those are the things that I personally keep, but you can obviously do whatever you want and whatever works for you. Under personal, you can also, if you do creative writing or anything else, you can obviously put as many folders as you want under personal, but that is what I would recommend to start with. And as you're going through all those hard drives and things like that, you will start finding things. Pets, very similar to kids or even vehicles, to be perfectly honest. We'll have insurance sometimes for our pet. We will have documents from when we purchased or adopted. I have a cat that was adopted from a rescue shelter, so I keep the paperwork from that, any vet paperwork, etc. Next up, travel. So I normally just do this by trip, and then so for example, Italy, July 2024, and then I'll put things like insurance, any planning documents if you've got like a timeline or something for your trip, tickets, anything that you want to easily access. And it goes without saying that all of these folders or setups that you have, you can share with different people and family members as appropriate as well. The final one I wanted to include is work. And for 90% of people, we use other computers for work. We have laptops, etc. But what can be useful is to have a folder system for companies that you have worked for in the past. It might not all be like tax return type stuff. So what you can do is have one, for example, for job applications, whether you're actively applying now or you will be in the future. You might want to have a folder for old, would be useful if I could spell as well, for old cover letters. You might also want to have things like your CVs, etc., so that you can easily have those on hand, or resumes, I know some parts of the world tend to call it. But having them easily on hand is really, really good. And then under certain companies, you can have things like your contract with that company, any pay slips that you got, whether they were digital or you've scanned the paper one, and any miscellaneous stuff that you want to keep hold of. I have found that this is really good for past work, to be able to look back and refer to any documents that you need years down the track. So step number 4, after you've got all your folders and everything set up and you have your online system ready for you to basically drag and drop your things into, it's time to grab all of those little digital or physical places where you have stuff. I would recommend, so that you don't overwhelm yourself, is to make a list of, okay, I've got a Dropbox, I've got a Google Drive, I've got my Google Photos, I've got 10 of these little USB sticks I've got to look at, I've got my big USB drive, whatever that is. So make a list, and however long the list is, just get it out of your head. Then you pick up one little thing at a time. So I might say, yep, I'm going to start with this USB stick, which I know is from university. And then you put this in your computer, you look through the documents that you're in there. You are similar to any other declutter. You're not copying everything. You are copying the parts of this that you want to keep and use. You may have duplicates, you may have triplicates, but only bring across what you need and consolidate one little thing at a time, and your future self will thank you. The biggest thing to note is kind of like when you're packing up your house to move to a new place. Don't bring the stuff that you don't need. Copy the things and allow yourself some time to break this down into small chunks. I remember when I went through all my university stuff and I looked at the things that I'd written and some of the stuff that I decided at the time to save, because I would have just done a drag and drop of everything into that USB or that folder. And I remember when I looked at it again, it was a trip down memory lane, which was really fun, but a good majority of the things that were on there, I simply did not need to keep. So don't be too ruthless, but be honest with yourself of what you're actually going to look at again in the future, or what you need to keep. Will this always be fun and easy? No, it certainly isn't. And I remember I did a huge digital declutter consolidation about 4 or 5 years ago, and it did take time, and I did work my way through that list. But I'm telling you, it's super worth it. So by the time you get to step number 5, we're at the end now, is to back up regularly. You have your digital system set up. Make sure that you set it up to either sync daily, weekly, whatever frequency you want. It is super easy to automate. With OneDrive that I use, it just constantly backs up into the cloud. Also, make sure that you set a little calendar reminder in your phone to physically back your, digitally, physically back up your files to a device that is outside of the cloud, just to make sure that you have those things that you can refer back to them, including family photos and things like that. You don't have to have a giant monstrosity like I do, but it can help to have something big enough that it will fit most or all of your things. And obviously, if you're extra precious about certain types of memories, make sure that you have a backup that is not even in your house. It could be in another secure location. So be kind to yourself as you go through this process, and remember why you started this in the first place. There's probably a small or big part of you that really just want to be able to find the things that matter to you, the photos, the memories, or avoiding the stress at tax time or other times of year when you're out and about and you really need to find a certain document quickly and you have no idea where it is. Consolidating and bringing things together in a way that is safe and functional for you, your family, your life situation is going to save you so much time and so much stress. And as you go through and consolidate, you can then start shutting off all those different servers and folders that you have that no longer really serve a purpose, and they were just sitting there and maybe even costing you money. Because I know so many people that I've worked with one-on-one that have several folders and several systems that they're paying for at the same time, that they could just consolidate it down and pay for one service. So I hope you enjoy this challenge. Let me know in the comments below. I'm very happy to do other stuff around digital decluttering. I have a few more videos around phone decluttering and a few things like that planned. But if there's anything in particular you would like to learn more about, let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate you being here, and I hope you have a great week, and I see you soon.